Well, like I said, there's no right or wrong way, and you don't know all of the variables that you all ask great questions, right? And when you're building a hypothetical like this, you are always like, did I miss anything when I was building it? But so the very first thing that I would do, like Alex and Brian did, is I would look at the multiples and I'd say, what is this multiple reasonable? So what could it possibly be? So it's bath bombs, maybe it's household products. That's a multiple of 3.13 on the revenue. 3.13 on the revenue. It could potentially be retail specialty, I think is the one that you guys identified, or retail online. So there's a few different multiples that I could use. I could use anywhere between a 0.99, 2.99, 3.13. If I go over to the EBITDA multiples, then household products, again, that's a 14.76 on EBITDA. That's kind of interesting. It might be miscellaneous specialty retailers at 7.94. It could potentially be personal products at 17.7 as well, right? So that's to me, the very first thing you want to do is take a look and see, what's my upside if I pay them the multiple that they want?
You're using the SDE as your EBITDA?
Yeah, I'm using it the same way. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't have an SDE chart, right? So then I'd say, okay, so my benchmark, like the normal benchmark, the median EBITDA is 3.7. So the asking price here would be 0.53 of revenue. 0.53 of revenue, that's the 3.2 million asking price divided by $6 million in sales. So it would be, if I just run it on all of he's asking 9.6. So if I just run it over here on household products, when I got to EBITDA, it was a 14.76. The specialty retailers, I want to say realtors for some reason, was 7.9, and personal products was 17.73. So is the 9.6 reasonable? It seems like it, right? Not that we're going to pay it, that just tells us, and is there potential upside? Might we be able to do a multiple hop? Yeah, that sounds kind of cool too. So it's just nice to get a feel for that when you're doing it. So I would remove the real estate. That's not a right or wrong thing. I do it because to me it makes it a quicker deal. But there are two options, gross or net. And almost everybody, when they start out, does a net deal. But I will tell you, you should start with gross, because their price, the multiple, has nothing to do with the value of the balance sheet assets usually. So remember I said don't negotiate for the seller in advance? Don't negotiate for the seller in advance. So if you say gross, we'd say the asking price was 3.2, the gross real estate was 2.3. That means to me the net ask is 900. That's kind of where I'm going to start when I'm walking the seller through it, right? So you divide that by the SDE, that means the ask multiple is only 2.7, and I picked the lowest industry multiple as my guide, because 7.9 was the lowest, okay? So that makes it look pretty appealing. If I do it the other way, I'd say the net real estate was 1.1, so my net ask was 2.1. If I divide that by SDE, then that means my ask multiple is 6.3. I'm still pretty good. So it actually is, it does initially appear to be reasonable, okay? So even though when you first do the math, it looks super high, it might still be okay once you do this analysis. That's why I think it's important to go through that step. And then on sources of deal cash, so how can we fund the deal from the company's assets? You could do carve out. A lot of you guys did that. You could do an SBA cap line. You could do a line of credit. You could do a straight distribution out to them. There's a lot of different things that you could do with this, and you guys came up with some other ththings too. You need to figure out how much working capital needs to stay in the company. And then you're going to argue initially when you get to the deal points and you get to the documents, you're going to say, obviously that cash stays in the company. Maybe that cash, by the way, hasn't been earned yet because the company's on an accrual basis. Like when we sold TNC, we would have liked to have kept all the cash that we had from selling tickets, but we had not yet rendered the services, and we were on accrual, so we hadn't earned that cash yet. So you're going to argue pretty strongly as a buyer, dude, you hadn't earned it yet. I still have to do the thing that makes that cash earned. So, and it's going to cost, like for our event, it's like the one big cost event happens once a year, just like the earning of it happens once a year. So you want to find out where are we in that cycle. So working capital is a big, big, big deal, right? You need to have enough of it, and you don't want to let them take it all away, because if they take it all away, you bought it on this multiple, it's supposed to go on the multiple. You're not supposed to have to put more money into it. That's why you're paying the multiple, right? So that's going to be the back and forth there. Same thing with accounts receivable. Accounts receivable you could carve out, you could sell them, you could factor them, you could give a prepay incentive to the people that owe the money, or any of the other things that you guys thought of. Same thing with the note receivable. The CD, I'd probably just carve it out. No, don't really need it. The E-Trade account, carve out, liquidate. Or if they have really good stocks that you're just super, super bullish on, then get a margin loan. Just margin it. For raw materials, you can do raw materials financing. I think, Jason, you guys said return. You could return some of them, selling any overstock that they've got. For work in process, there's actually work in process financing loans. You can do an SBA Express. It was only $138,750. SBA 7A Express is up to $350,000, so you might think about doing that. You could also do consignment on the inventory. So basically tell the seller, look, that $735, we're going to carve it out. I'm going to keep it for you, and I'm going to pay you as we sell that inventory. You get a warehouse line to finance the inventory. You could run a sale. Somebody mentioned running a big sale, or do that seller consignment that I mentioned, or a million other things. For the FF&E, you could liquidate it, get asset-based lending. You could do a sale and leaseback of that as well. You could do the sale and leaseback to the seller or to a third party. A straight lease, liquidate and lease, or a 504 SBA loan. For vehicles, liquidate, lease them, liquidate and lease, sale, leaseback, 504. And the real estate, sell it, sale, leaseback, loan, refi, SBA 504, lots of options, right? So it's just, I think you guys did a great job. There's a million ways to do it, and it's just a question of what makes the seller happy. And that to me is the big takeaway, is what you think might work, the seller might just be repulsed by, right? They just, I'm never going to agree to do this thing. So what you need is 50 or 150 other ways to present that to them so that you can get to what you want. Because I guarantee you, if it's a motivated seller, you're going to get there with the list of things we have. So on the funding the deal from other sources, you guys mentioned, I think, look, here's the multiple, you need to be down lower. I'd probably have that conversation and say, and I might even pull out my chart and say, no, look, I mean, the going rate on SDE is 2.5. So I might try to use that to get them down. That's helpful sometimes. It's a logical argument, not a not an emotional argument, but that's something you could do. For the sales price, as far as seller carrybacks, you could do an owner carry. You could do a partial revenue-based financing, or a million other ways. That's just, there's a whole bunch of different ways to get the seller to carry the money back. You could assume the AP. So nobody really talked about assuming the debt. That's definitely something not to forget. All the seller is going to do when the seller gets your money is pay off the debt because he has to, right? So to me, the debt always should come into play. Now, remember we've got an SPV, so the SPV can assume the debt and be liable for it as long as you're not personally guaranteeing it. You probably don't care. Never personally guarantee it. You don't need to. But that would be something, and I always start with, I'll take it subject to the debt. And then my next thing is I'll wrap the debt, meaning its seller's still obligated under both of those. Subject to, I don't have a note. Wrapped, I gave the seller a note for my SPV. Assumed, I got the lender to get the seller off the hook and put my company on the hook. So those are lots of different ways. Or maybe I would just do a partial buy down on the debt, or I would negotiate a reduction. I'd go to the people that owe the money and say, hey, I'm buying this company, but there's a little bit of debt on it. I can get you paid off, but it's not going to be 100% if I get it paid off right now. And so negotiate the debt down, or extend the terms on the debt because you want the cash flow from the business to cover the note that you gave the seller or the DDP. And so you just go to the debtors and the lender and say, can you give me a 90-day waiver? Just give me a reprieve for 90 days and then we pick up the payments. Well, now you can get 90 days of whatever was going out to service that debt that you can give to the seller for the down payment. For the extrusion process, sale, or you could do a license and lease back. That's probably not a deal you'll be able to get done unless you know somebody before the closing. So that might be something to think about later. The shifting, is there the ability to go and find someone else that needs the manufacturing, the spindle time or the time on the machines? There frequently is. So that would be something that I would be looking out into the industry to see. Is there any way for me to take this capacity and turn it into money? For the podcast marketing, I was kind of surprised nobody looked at that stuff. But I would definitely, we've got live events and podcasts. You could go get sponsors for that. You could go get a split equity deal for that to get a third party to come in that has an interest. And I think nobody talked about co-investors. So that would be another interesting way to get some money. Well, yeah, somebody said, who said sell 10% of the company? You guys? Yeah, okay, great. They sell via a rep network, so there might be the ability, I'd say, okay, well, I've got leads coming in from AdWords and from my reps. Is there a possibility to sell those leads to somebody else? We actually did a deal with Agora that was a couple $100,000 a month of lead sales when we bought one of our companies. That was kind of fun. Or maybe if I'm paying that rep network, maybe I let them go, make them independent contractors, or maybe I outsource that to somebody else that's got their own rep network, right? The CEO retiring and the other guys, absolutely go to those people and get co-investors from the CFO and the COO who are staying on. They have a vested interest in staying on. You have a vested interest in them having a vested interest in the success of the company. So getting them to put money in, to me, is a big, big, big thing. The customers, I didn't hear anybody talk about running pre-sale tests or 100% promos or anything like that. That's always an option because you've got people out there. Seller starting a new business, I wanted to know how much cash did the seller need. I didn't tell you, but I would ask them. I'd want to know. And would the seller be willing to carry everything except the cash that they absolutely needed? All of you guys talked about the plane in various ways. We can help them buy a plane. We can talk them out of the plane. We can say, tell you what, how about if we buy you a NetJet pass so you can have the plane for 15 hours to see how you like it. But I'll tell you what, owning a plane's expensive. You might not want to own it because he also said that he wanted to take lessons. So maybe he thinks he wants to buy the plane to own that while he's flying it. And he's like, I'll tell you what, let me get you some lessons and then you see if you really like that. You'll have your cash, but that way I don't need the cash right away to buy the plane. So I think there's a way to put the plane off. So discounting, if I could get him to discount it to SDE, that'd be around $67,000, assuming the accounts payable and doing the other things that we talked about. These things I mentioned would take a little bit longer, the spindle time thing and the extrusion license. If you just kind of walk through all of that stuff, I'm assuming I could probably get 20% buy-in from the management. You guys did 10, whatever it is fine. No right or wrong number. And I gave it to them on the net purchase price. I think I mentioned a deal before. I'll frequently cut the deal and then sell it at a higher valuation. Because if we negotiate a great deal, we don't have to pass our great negotiating on to anybody else. We might pass half of our great negotiate on, right? Seller carryback, I don't know how much that is because I didn't know how much the new business was. That was the big thing that I'm going to have to take care of for them. And then I think I could barter the plane, do the render lessons. So I just figured I could get around 474 for that. So for me, total cash from assets minus the real estate, net cash from assets was $1,480,000, 474 from the other stuff would give me about $1,954,000 available. The purchase price without the real estate, if I could get them on the gross deal, would be $900K. I'd have the seller carry 75% of that, hopefully, depends on how much he needs for the business though. That would mean the purchase cash needed would be about $225,000, which would give me about $1.7 million cash to play with as I decide, do I want to give the seller some of that? Do I want to take some of that? Do I want to leave some of that in the money? If I split it evenly, it's about $600K in my pocket, $600K in the company, which should be enough if there's $925 right now, and then $600K to the seller. So just, again, no right or wrong answer, just lots and lots of ways to do it. Does that make sense? Is that helpful to go through?
Oh, yeah. Fair.
Yeah? Okay.